Welcome back, everybody. Thanks for stopping by again. This is another intriguing Whimsy upload. I hope you all like, share, subscribe, and ring that bell to stay notified for my newest uploads. Let's hop in.
I think more than anything, this place, Arcosanti, is a beautifully crafted stage for every artist. The way that art sings through the architecture of this place really continues to give this place life.
There are these artistic crafts that go on here, the casting of the famous Solari wind bells in both bronze and ceramic. The buildings themselves are beautiful, and we've placed residences in the back wall of a performing arts amphitheater, and it's really fantastic. Walk right outside your door. I live in a theater. It's really something.
Arcosanti is a project that was founded in 1970. They broke ground here, about 150 activists, architects, engineers, planners, and it was really founded by Paulo Solari, the architect, planner, urbanist. Before the 60s, before the 50s, we didn't really understand the extent of the impact on the planet. And so Solari is part of this movement of acknowledging that, and he wants to design an alternative type of urban form that may help us live in balance with ecology, with nature, with each other as well. In 1970, he says, you know what, we're going to try and build a real version of this, a city-scale version of the theories that he has been developing. For him, it's so important to actually experience your ideal project in the real world. So get it off of the paper and into reality. And so that's what he did here in 1970 when so many folks came up and started actually digging, building, and constructing materials.
When I first came, I was interested in this concept of arcology, where it's ecology and architecture combined, thinking of the city as an organism. I was really curious to think of architecture on a larger scale and how that would affect the human experience. And I've always had this interest in people, kind of like a psychology interest too, and combining that with architecture. So I thought this would be a great place to learn from that perspective, and it has been, absolutely. It has exceeded my expectations as far as that realm of understanding.
I am currently the freshest batch of citizens here at Arcosanti. I've been here for just shy of 2 months now. Stayed on after finishing my workshop. I wanted to get my feet wet in urban planning. I hoped to go to graduate school for planning after my undergraduate in economics and sociology. While studying those subjects, I got a really good grasp on problem analysis, on looking at problems of the human condition. But that's kind of where it stopped, and I wanted more. I wanted to be able to not only look at the problems, but to be able to proffer ways of moving forward that could remediate the problems that I was so intensely studying.
The fact is, we get nearly 50,000 people a year coming down that road to see what this is about, to see if they can participate in it. Since 1970, some 7,000 people have taken part in the construction workshops. And really interesting folks come laden with ideas that they're willing to talk about, and we have the time to talk about them. And we're looking at big picture issues here. For instance, my commute to work on a daily basis is to wake up, slide down a ladder, and there I am in the middle of the office. Even though I do own a car, I almost never use it.
And so here, I think he's attempting to prove that you can be afforded the same freedoms that the car might afford the citizen in a suburbia, but without being attached to some sort of high technology, some sort of consumptive technology like the automobile.
Most of our bodies, our legs, were designed to walk around. So if we could walk around in cities, in American cities especially, that'd be a great thing. It'd be a great thing for a whole bunch of reasons. It'd be a great thing for sociability, it'd be great for our health, and it would be great for the federal budget, so much of which is involved in defense spending, and so much of that defense spending is to just keep that oil coming to us so that we can power our cars and the separate buildings that we have.
Suburbia really allows people to become disengaged. It allows people not only disengaged from each other spatially, but politically. You can define the terms of your built environment on this little slice of paradise, and everything is according to you. That's great. It's really nice to have that type of freedom. But here we think it's more important to engage in the freedom of working with others to come up with a truly civic solution to our problems.
But it teaches you so much about conflict resolution.
I think our sentiment here is that community is really more of a process than an outcome. Community is something that you have to continuously work towards, continuously take steps into working together. It's an iterative process of meetings, of conversations, of conflict resolution. It's not just something that pops up suddenly. It really doesn't pop up at all. It is those meetings. It is the process itself.
I think that this place prompts you to reflect on the ways in which we interact with the natural world, rather than building on the planed, arable, well-irrigated land to start, because that would be the most cost-effective place to build. You build on a sheer cliff because we're able to, and the flat, arable land ought to be left for agriculture.
Well, we have a mesquite forest here. They just grow naturally. You don't need to water them at all. They're just part of the desert landscape. And mesquite is a legume tree, and they produce like a bean pod, and so I like to harvest them. It's just kind of become a passion of mine. It's a food source. It was for the natives who lived on this land, and I'm trying to help like revive it, I guess, as a food source for us. And so I harvest and have it milled, and we do a pancake breakfast. This year was our third annual pancake breakfast.
The thermal wrap and the tires go up at the same time with the back bearing. It's a process that goes up one tire at a time, providing the thermal wrap and burial support for the tires as they go up. Again, following the floor plan. The cisterns go in at this point in the appropriate place, and rebar pins go in to anchor the bond beam, which is formed by aluminum cans, to the tire work. The birdcage steel goes in at the same time, anchored into the bond beam itself. The birdcage is a form for a ferrocement vaulted roof structure. Here you can see how it is anchored into the bond beam with the steel. It is set up to receive several coats of plaster and be a ferrocement dome. The little footing across the front will take some framing as per the architectural drawings, non-bearing framing, just filling in for glass and a door. The vaults are then plastered, and the first coat of plaster usually has some fiber in it to make it so it doesn't go through the mesh that is inserted underneath the rebar. And like I say, 3 or 4 coats of plaster gives us a ferrocement dome that's very safe, very lightweight. Next we would be looking at the masonry work of aluminum cans going up around the vaults with a batter slightly leaning in, and a wrap of insulation, and then filled with dirt for a very simple thermal roof detail that will allow us a plane of earth on which to pour a slab that will give us a basic slab roof. We usually put insulation down there depending on the climate before we pour the slab. The slab then will drain into the cisterns. This is using bottle or can masonry to form up for the dirt. We usually put a vapor barrier in right after the insulation as well under the slab. And then we bring the same detail around the little vaults, cap the thermal wrap, and bring the earth up for the final burial, and there's the gutter going into the cistern. Now we have the cisterns being wrapped in insulation and the final burial and shaping of earth going on to wrap the building. The front face greenhouse carpentry goes in, and the insulation on top of the greenhouse, the metal flashing, the place for the panels is delineated and they're installed. The operable gravity skylight is installed, and the building is essentially put together. At this point, we insulate the tire work in front of the greenhouse, put metal over it, bring up a burial there to snug the building in, and we are looking at the basic structure being done. Then planting goes in the botanical cells and landscaping, and we end up with a simple survival model Earthship. Drawings, architectural drawings for the systems will accompany this. Now we're looking inside the room, out toward the botanical cells, which are planted as soon as possible. Again, drawings for them are in the architectural set of how to achieve that. So this is the overview of the building. Now we're looking at doing replications, as it is possible to do this in 2Us, 3Us, 4Us, however many you want. The same process is applied to make a full-on home, as many rooms as you want.
I'm John Edmark. I'm an artist, designer, and inventor, and I teach at Stanford University. I don't think of myself as a sculptor. Clearly, the works are sculptures of sorts, but in a sense, that's a coincidence. They're just the medium that I'm using to ask and answer questions that I'm interested in. The driving motivation of my work is a search for unusual behaviors, things that are non-intuitive, that maybe seem impossible. Math has a kind of precision and a way of clarifying relationships that allows me to achieve some of these behaviors and patterns that I'm trying to create. I'm sometimes asked, why am I sort of so intrigued with spirals? What is it about spirals? And I think part of the answer is that I just find them beautiful. It goes infinitely small and it goes infinitely large. It's endless. And I'm rotating it each time. I'm rotating it at 137.5 degrees, the golden angle, which is based on the golden ratio. The golden ratio is the ratio where the smaller is to the larger as the larger is to the whole. And it ends up, this is a very powerful generative ratio. Anytime you create a pattern using the golden angle, you're going to end up with spirals appearing, and it's actually been shown mathematically to be the best way to distribute leaves on a stem to minimize overlap. Say a leaf or a petal or a seed gets put out here, the next one will get put out 137 degrees around over here, and the next one then gets put out 137 degrees over here and around. But the spirals are actually a symptom of this process of placing each bud 137 degrees around from the previous bud. When I was wanting to demonstrate this transforming nature of the towers, I decided to animate them. And when I animated it, I was surprised to discover that not only did it show plateaus appearing and disappearing, but there was this very strong sense of continuity of the plateaus moving down the tower or up the tower. About 5 years later, I suddenly realized, oh, what if I just keep on rotating the entire tower, not just the next level? And in fact, blooms are a direct descendant of a multi-year long sequence of explorations on these golden angle spiral geometry studies. The kind of distortions and warpings that you see happening are a result of me slightly breaking the rule of rotating by the golden angle. And so they're moving back and forth in terms of hovering around that angle, and that causes them to have this kind of warped, distorted effect. I think my work is most successful when it evokes a sense of wonder, when it's sort of seems to be magical. What I'm trying to achieve in my work is something that will evoke that in somebody else, that they'll say, wow, what's going on there? How is that possible?
subscribe.